Modern society often misunderstands the value of being alone. We live in a world where solitude is seen as failure, and constant interaction is a sign of success. Few realize that there's a quiet strength in choosing solitude, one that many are afraid to explore. We're conditioned to avoid our own company, as if silence were a threat instead of an invitation. But what if this view is completely wrong? While many rush to stay constantly connected, others discover in silence a doorway to something deeper. Away from noise and expectations, true inner growth can begin. Thinkers like Montaigne and Thoreau saw voluntary solitude as fertile ground for self-discovery. Without the eyes of others, we can see ourselves more clearly. Maybe that's why solitude is so feared. It reveals. To many, solitude feels like a void that threatens to swallow their identity. It's often linked with pain, loss, and emotional breakdown. In a culture addicted to constant stimulation, silence can echo like a scream. And when we're unprepared, that stillness can quickly turn into anxiety. The fear doesn't come from nowhere. It's been deeply planted. That fear is fueled by a society that teaches us happiness only exists when shared. From an early age, we learn to fear quiet and value only what's external. But history shows that solitude can be a space of deep revelation. Thoreau found not an end, but a beginning in isolation. Still, few dare to step outside the norm. The issue isn't solitude itself, but how it's experienced. Without purpose or preparation, isolation can feel like a prison. Nietzsche warned of the danger in diving too deep into the self without structure. Without self-awareness, the journey turns into a maze. A mind that isn't ready won't find light in silence, only confusion. And that's when solitude becomes toxic. Often, the fear of solitude is really a lack of direction. Minimalist philosophy suggests the opposite approach. Remove the excess, quiet the noise, focus on what matters. But when solitude is forced instead of chosen, it can feel suffocating. People in this situation often spiral into obsessive and self-critical thoughts. Without direction, silence becomes a cage. Curiously, inside this discomfort lies something powerful. When solitude is embraced and understood, it stops being a threat and becomes an ally. It takes courage to face that initial unease and stay present with what arises. Great internal discoveries only happen when the outside noise fades. In that silence, growth begins to bloom. Free from social pressure and modern distractions, the mind can finally breathe. Thinkers like Nietzsche and Montaigne knew this well. Intentional isolation is a chance to listen inwardly, to question beliefs, and to rewrite our personal story. It's not about escaping life, but about seeing it from a new angle. When noise ends, the true voice emerges, and once you hear it, you're never the same. Nietzsche saw solitude as a requirement for authentic creation. Stepping away from society's noise allowed for deep reflection and groundbreaking ideas. Michel de Montaigne also embraced voluntary retreat, using solitude to question norms and express independent thought. In this light, solitude wasn't emptiness, it was presence, not lack, but freedom. Modern psychology also acknowledges this transformative power. Donald Winnicott believed the true self emerges when we learn to be alone. He argued that voluntary solitude supports emotional growth, helping us recognize our feelings with more clarity. In that space, we can form healthier habits, break destructive cycles, and realign our inner world. It's a liberating journey. Philosophies like minimalism and transcendentalism point in the same direction. By reducing distractions and simplifying life, we create space for what truly matters. Inspired by Thoreau, minimalism becomes a living practice for mental clarity and emotional focus. Simplicity stops being aesthetic. It becomes a path of inner refinement. In silence, discernment is born. Many modern entrepreneurs embrace this lifestyle to boost creativity and focus. When chosen wisely, solitude can lead to more conscious decision-making. Away from social pressure, it's easier to see what really matters. This connection to the self brings clarity and reduces dependency on distractions. There is strength in intentional withdrawal. Still, like any powerful tool, solitude can harm if misused. Isolation without preparation or clear purpose becomes a trap. It's like diving into deep waters without oxygen. What could have been revealing becomes suffocating. That's why it's essential to understand the risks before stepping into solitude. The mind must be ready. Nietzsche warned that not everyone is prepared to walk alone. Without inner structure, solitude becomes unstable ground where obsessive thoughts take over. Introspection, once an ally, turns into a threat. When isolation stops being a choice and becomes a compulsion, growth gives way to stagnation. We need preparation to turn silence into wisdom. Excessive isolation can distort our perception of reality. Psychologists point out that long-term solitude, when not chosen consciously, can lead to anxiety and depression. The person disconnects from the outside world and gets lost within. Without balance, silence becomes internal noise. What could heal instead creates conflict. Even Nietzsche, a defender of growth through solitude, recognized its dangers. He believed only a clear sense of purpose could protect against the emptiness of isolation. The mind needs direction. Without it, it becomes a battlefield of scattered thoughts, blocking progress. Modern psychology agrees. Without guidance, solitude paralyzes. With it, it sets us free. Real-life examples show how unprepared isolation can backfire. Many seek solitude hoping to find peace, but instead uncover restlessness. The intention is good, but emotional unpreparedness turns silence into a trap. Instead of clarity, they find confusion. Solitude without purpose becomes a mirror of hidden insecurities. Understanding these risks is crucial, so that solitude doesn't become a burden. But that doesn't mean we should avoid it. On the contrary, we need to learn how to use it wisely. Psychology offers tools to turn solitude into a path of strength. When guided with awareness, this journey opens new possibilities. Among the theories exploring this topic is object relations theory. For psychoanalysts like Melanie Klein and Donald Winnicott, emotional development is deeply tied to how we relate to others. Human bonds help shape our identity, offering safety and essential references. When completely absent, balance can be lost. This theory highlights that relationships are key to building the self. However, when taken to extremes, it may overlook the value of solitude. Always prioritizing interaction risks ignoring what silence can teach. Montaigne, for instance, saw introspection as a powerful tool for self-understanding. Balance is the key. It's important to see that the question isn't choosing between solitude and connection. The real power lies in knowing how and when to use each. Moments of solitude help process experiences and organize thoughts. Social interaction brings new perspectives. Together, they create a healthy rhythm for growth. Modern psychologists say this balance is more powerful than either side alone. Intentional solitude, mixed with meaningful relationships, allows deeper self-connection. The mind needs this back and forth. That rhythm is where true maturity develops. It's a cycle of inner and outer alignment. Understanding this flow helps prevent solitude from turning into a prison. And it's here that creative work becomes a bridge between our inner and outer worlds. Creating is a way to stay in touch with something alive, even while alone. Solitude becomes productive presence, not absence. When channeled into creativity, solitude takes on new meaning. Psychologists like Anthony Storr believe that time alone can be one of the richest experiences for self-growth. Away from distractions, the mind gains freedom to imagine, structure, and build. Many of the world's greatest ideas were born in deep silence. Anthony Storr believed creative work could turn solitude into something healing and meaningful. When inner energy finds a way to be expressed, being alone stops feeling heavy. It becomes fulfilling. Writers like Franz Kafka and Emily Dickinson created powerful works from their solitude. Creativity becomes both refuge and release. This process isn't limited to art. It can show up in any area. A personal project, learning something new, or writing down reflections. What matters is channeling solitude into something with meaning. When that happens, silence is no longer empty. It becomes constructive. Solitude turns into purpose. Minimalism and transcendentalism offer practical foundations for this approach. Inspired by Thoreau, these movements invite us to remove excess, so the essential can emerge. Instead of escaping the world, they guide us to rediscover it from within. In this context, solitude becomes a tool for focus and clarity. What's unnecessary fades. What's true remains. What's true remains. Thoreau wrote Walden during a period of chosen isolation. He didn't retreat to disconnect from life, but to understand it more deeply. Nature became his mirror, and silence his guide. This kind of solitude doesn't separate us from the world. It brings us closer. It reconnects us to the essence of being alive. Creative work also builds a bridge between the individual and others. When we shape ideas into something we can share, solitude gains a new role. Silence begins to bear fruit, and those fruits nourish the collective. In this way, isolation becomes connection. By creating, we reconnect, even from a place of absence. But none of this happens without practice. Being alone is a skill developed over time, with patience and intention. It takes courage to face your own reflection and stay present through discomfort. It's not an innate gift, but an emotional discipline. The more you train it, the more you grow. Modern society values constant connection, but real growth often happens in its absence. Being alone doesn't mean being lost. Often, it means finally being found. Montaigne and Winnicott already pointed this out. The one who can be alone is the one who's learned to listen to themselves. And that is power. The ability to be alone marks a turning point in emotional maturity. It's not about running from the world, but relating to it more authentically. Thoreau didn't abandon humanity. He simply chose to hear it from a different place. That's when silence stops being emptiness and becomes an answer, one only understood by those willing to listen. Developing the ability to be alone means accepting that discomfort is part of the process. It's not easy to break free from the need for approval or to silence the noise of external expectations. But in that quiet, something real begins to emerge. Enjoying your own company is freeing. It's where your true voice starts to rise. Winnicott saw this capacity as a sign of emotional maturity. Someone who can be alone without feeling lost shows strong psychological development. They don't rely on external validation to feel whole. Solitude becomes a symbol of strength, not weakness. A quiet yet powerful achievement. Being alone doesn't mean withdrawing from the world forever. It means learning to move between silence and conversation, between reflection and sharing. Thoreau showed this by putting his solitude into words, turning isolation into a bridge to thousands of readers. Genuine introspection always comes back as contribution. A mind free from constant distractions becomes fertile ground. Thoughts deepen, emotions settle, and values reveal themselves. That's the true gift of solitude. Time to notice what we usually overlook. Time to review, rethink, and rebuild. Time to see who we really are, beyond expectations. Solitude is not the end of the road. It's the beginning of a new path. A path that leads to rare clarity and a deeper connection with life. Those who learn to walk alone don't fear the company of others, because they already know who they are, and from that place, they can connect more honestly. At this point, the invitation is clear. Set aside time for yourself. Explore silence, not as absence, but as space. Use it to reflect, to create, to realign and grow. When well used, solitude is like fertile soil, quiet, deep, and full of potential. And the more you nurture it, the more it blooms. Don't let the fear of being alone block your growth. Instead, turn it into a tool. Choose introspection as a companion, not a punishment. Find purpose in the silence, and discover that solitude can be the most beautiful meeting of all. A meeting with yourself. If this reflection touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we keep exploring the possibilities of inner transformation. There's much more to discover in silence. And that journey begins with one simple step. Pause, listen, and allow yourself to feel. The next step is yours.